A basket of yams crashed into the river with a splash. The old man's hands trembled as the water swallowed the offering and carried it away without a sound. "Please," he whispered hoarsely. "Take it, take everything. Just come back." The river flowed on, cold and indifferent. No voice answered him. No glowing light rose from the water. Nothing. The old man sank to his knees in the mud, staring at the silent current. Once, this same river had made him the richest farmer in the valley. Now it would not even acknowledge his existence. A group of children watching from a distance whispered among themselves. One brave boy stepped closer. "Grandfather Obinna," the boy asked softly, "why does the river hate you?" The old farmer closed his eyes. His voice was barely more than a breath. "Because I betrayed the spirit that blessed me." The wind rustled the dead grass behind him, and his mind drifted back to the years when the land had not yet turned against him. 7 long years of failure. That was how long Obinna had struggled with his farm in the Valley of Udo. Every planting season began with hope. Every harvest season ended in humiliation. Seeds rotted in the ground. Rain clouds passed over his land without dropping a single drop. Neighboring farms produced baskets of maize and cassava while Obinna's soil remained stubbornly empty. The villagers had started whispering about him. "His land is cursed," one man would say. Another would laugh. Or maybe he simply doesn't know how to farm. The laughter always stung. One afternoon, Obinna returned from the fields with dirt on his hands and exhaustion in his bones. His wife Amaka stood outside their small hut, arms folded. Again, she asked quietly. He did not answer. She looked at the empty basket he carried and shook her head. 7 years, Obinna, she said. 7 years and nothing grows. "I will not abandon the land," he replied stubbornly. Amaka sighed deeply. Stubbornness does not feed children. But Obinna said nothing. That night he lay awake listening to the wind push against the walls of the hut. He had tried everything. New seeds. New tools. Even prayers at the village shrine. Nothing had worked. Near midnight, he finally rose and stepped outside. The moon hung low in the sky. In the distance, he could hear the gentle flow of the Ao River. Without fully understanding why, Obinna began walking toward it. The riverbank was quiet when he arrived. He stood there for a long time staring at the dark water. Finally, he dropped to his knees. "I have nothing left," he said aloud, his voice breaking. "If any spirit hears me, help me." The river rippled. At first, he thought it was the wind. Then the water began to glow. A pale blue light spread across the surface, growing brighter until Obinna had to shield his eyes. From the center of the river, a figure slowly rose. She appeared to be made of water and moonlight. Her long hair flowed like the current itself. Obinna's heart nearly stopped. Who are you?" he whispered. The figure's voice sounded like the movement of the river. "I am Kemera," she said. "Spirit of the Ao River." Obinna's hands began shaking. "A spirit. You called for help," Kemera continued calmly. "And I have listened." She lifted one hand. From the water rose a clay vessel filled with shimmering liquid. "If you sprinkle this water upon your farm, your land will flourish beyond imagination." Obinna's eyes widened. "Truly?" "Yes," she replied. "But blessings from the river are never free." The air suddenly felt colder. Obinna swallowed nervously. "What must I do?" "Half of every harvest you produce must be returned to the river," Kemera said. "Forever." The word echoed in the silence. Obinna hesitated only for a moment. Half was a heavy price. But he had nothing now. Half of abundance was better than all of nothing. "I accept," he said quickly. "I promise." The spirit studied his face carefully. "Do not break this covenant," she warned. "The river remembers everything." Then she handed him the clay vessel. The light faded. The river returned to darkness. Obinna stood alone again. But the vessel remained in his hands. The next morning, he walked across his barren field, heart pounding. "Are you sure about this?" Amaka asked nervously. "What if it is a trick?" Obinna uncorked the vessel. The water inside glowed faintly. "Watch," he said. He sprinkled the enchanted water across the soil. At first, nothing happened. Amaka folded her arms skeptically. Maybe the spirit was. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Tiny green shoots burst from the earth. Amaka gasped. Obinna dropped to his knees, staring in disbelief. Within days, the entire field had transformed.
It's incredible.
Maize grew taller than a man.
Miracle.
Yams pushed out of the soil like buried treasure. Cassava plants spread across the land in thick rows. Neighbors began gathering at the edge of the farm. "This is impossible," one man muttered. "How did he do it?" another whispered. When harvest time arrived, Obinna filled 20 large baskets with crops. He remembered his promise. Without hesitation, he carried 10 baskets to the riverbank. Amaka watched silently. "Half of everything?" she asked. "Yes," Obinna said firmly. "The river kept its promise. I must keep mine." He placed the baskets beside the water. The river glowed softly for a moment. Then the baskets slowly sank beneath the surface. Obinna smiled. The covenant had begun. The following years changed everything. Every season brought even larger harvests. Obinna expanded his farm until it covered 3 plantations. He hired 6 workers to help manage the fields. His small hut became a large compound. People who once mocked him now greeted him with respect. One evening, his friend Chitty clapped him on the shoulder. "You are the richest farmer in Udo Valley now," Chitty said with admiration. Obinna laughed. Hard work brings reward. Every harvest season, he carried half of his crops to the river. Year after year. For years passed this way. Then one day, during another massive harvest, Obinna stood staring at the baskets meant for the river. 10 baskets. 10 more sat beside them for his own household. Chitty noticed his expression. "What troubles you?" Obinna scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Tell me something," he said. "Yes. Do you think the river really needs half of this?" Chitty frowned. "You made a deal with the spirit. But the river does no work," Obinna argued. "It is my sweat that grows these crops." Chitty's voice lowered. "Be careful, my friend." Obinna laughed dismissively. "Relax." That year, he carried only 8 baskets to the river. His heart pounded as he placed them on the bank. Nothing happened. The water remained calm. Obinna smiled to himself. The next harvest, he brought 5 baskets. Again, nothing happened. Soon the offering shrank to 2 baskets. Finally, one season, he brought nothing at all. Amaka noticed. "You did not go to the river today," she said. Obinna shrugged. "I am tired of throwing away my hard work." "That was your promise," she said quietly. "Promises can change," he replied coldly. Months passed. Nothing happened. No curse. No angry spirit. Obinna's confidence grew into arrogance. During the Great Harvest Festival, the entire village gathered to celebrate. Drums thundered through the air. People danced around large fires. Obinna stood in the center of the celebration holding a cup of palm wine. Chitty raised his voice above the music. "To Obinna, the greatest farmer in the valley." The crowd cheered loudly. Obinna lifted his cup proudly. "Everything I have," he declared, "I built with my own hands." The cheers grew louder. But then the wind suddenly changed. The drums slowed. Dark clouds rolled across the sky. Someone pointed toward the distance. The river. A deep roar echoed across the valley. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Obinna's smile faded. The river began glowing an eerie blue. From the rushing water rose the familiar figure of Nkemera. The music stopped. Fear spread through the crowd. The river spirit's eyes burned like cold fire. "Obinna," she said. Her voice carried across the entire valley. "You have broken the covenant." The farmer's throat tightened. I did nothing." The spirit raised her hand. "Do not lie to the river." The wind howled violently. "You took the river's blessing," she continued, "and repaid it with greed." Obinna stepped backward. "Please listen." But it was too late. "The river gives," Nkemera said coldly. "And the river takes away." The ground cracked open beneath the fields. Crops withered instantly. Green leaves turned black and crumbled into dust. Livestock collapsed in their pens. Water drained from the wells as if swallowed by the earth itself. The villagers screamed. Within minutes, the rich farmland had become a lifeless wasteland. Obinna fell to his knees. My farm, my farm." The spirit's voice echoed one final time. "Let this land remind you of the price of betrayal." Then she vanished. The river returned to silence. Life collapsed quickly after that. The 6 workers abandoned the farm within days. Amaka packed her belongings. "I warned you," she said sadly. She took the children and left. Even his second wife Chinyu disappeared soon after. The villagers avoided him. His once prosperous plantations became known as the Cursed Fields. And so the years passed. Until the day he stood again at the riverbank, throwing baskets of yams into the water. Begging. Apologizing. Crying. But the river never answered. The old man's voice trembled as he finished telling the story to the boy beside him. "The river gave me everything," he whispered. "And I lost it all because I thought I deserved more." The boy looked toward the silent water. "Will the spirit ever forgive you?" Obinna shook his head slowly. "The river does not forget." He turned toward the viewer of the story, his eyes filled with regret. And remember this: greed can destroy even the greatest blessing. If this story made you think, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have kept your promise to the river, or would you have made the same mistake? Because sometimes, the price of betrayal is a silence that lasts forever.